be able to follow along. Okay, so now let's go into what really like looks interesting, and it's creating your first project for like in Unity. So when we are gonna create a project, I'm gonna just go ahead and doing so you guys can see how is the process. So I will go to projects and I will go ahead new, and I'm gonna say I wanna use this version. This will generate this little window here, and this is something pretty cool from Unity, and is that, well, it also happens in other game engines. But what basically we have here is templates. A template that has some predefined configurations and packages for a specific type of game that we can build. So you can see here we have 2D games, 3D games, 3D games with extras. For example, the VR lightweight pipeline renderer, the render pipeline, sorry, or just the lightweight render pipeline. So these are just like some cool templates that will help you to start like a little bit ahead of what you need. It doesn't mean that once you create one, you cannot go to the other one. Like I started in a 2D game, and then at the middle I decided, oh no, I want to have a 2D game, yeah, but with some 3D objects, because I wanted to like to be a platform, but like with 3D models or something. You can still do it. Is perfectly doable. It's just that it's gonna require you to make some changes in the configuration. Same applies for the 3D, like you can roll back from 3D to 2D, but as well this will require a little bit more of work, because you added at the beginning extra things that at the end you won't want to use. And in game development, for example, when we talk about mobile, optimization is key, because we are trying to run a powerful game and a powerful application in a device that is not as capable as a computer, for example, or a platform like a PlayStation or Xbox or something like that. So we should, from the beginning, always try to select the correct template that we are going to use. In this case, we are going with a 2D game, as we saw in the game. So we are gonna go ahead and select this one. What we have here is just our like the name of the project. This is important for you to recognize what is this game about, basically. So try to give a meaningful name. So I'm gonna call this Unity Basics, and then you are gonna go and select where do you wanna save your project. In my case, I want to save it into Unity projects, and for now, just for the sake of this course, I'm gonna save it directly here, like into Unity projects. We are just saving it as a Unity project, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit create. This will start a process. There you go, the Unity like starting logo from their like engine. And this will start like creating all that I told you. Like you see the Unity package manager. So it's trying to see, like, depending on the template that I choose, to see what do I need to run a 2D game. Like what's the basic that I need. Of course, this doesn't mean that it's gonna give me like a complete game. It's just the basic configuration of the engine. So you see here, it's importing a couple of things, it's just moving things around, it's just creating a bunch of folders that we need in Unity to be able to run. I will go a little bit more into the folders that Unity creates, not too much in like what exactly each one does, because maybe at this point of your like learning curve is that important. But there's something that is pretty important to know about when we are talking about version control, because there are a lot of files and folders that Unity creates when you open, like what is doing, that you don't really need to push into your host, like into your hosting version control, like GitHub, because those ones doesn't really matter to the game, like in a certain way. like Unity is capable to recreate them in your local machine when you reopen. So and they are like, some of them or most of them are related to your local machine. So it's better to not have them like in the cloud. Okay, so here we have our Unity project, right? So now that we are here, you probably think like you get a little bit overwhelmed. Like this looks a little bit scary. There's a lot of things going on here, and you probably don't understand if you have never seen something like this before. But don't worry, this that's pretty normal. Like I know it for a fact because even when I started, it also looked a little bit overwhelming to me. Let me just adjust it to the size of the screen. Sorry, I have a widescreen monitor, so a little bit of the screen could be cut off. Okay, so here we are in our Unity engine. So we are gonna go and cover each of the windows and tools. Well, of course, like the basic that you need to learn before starting a new game. So I want to start from here. So as you can see, there's a bunch of things, but all of this is like rearrangeable. What does that mean is like I can move this window and put it like somewhere else, and it will like completely alter my window, right? I can even let it like be as its own, or I can even like close it, or like I can do a bunch of stuff. This will depend on how do you feel more comfortable using the Unity engine, because I've seen like all kind of setups. Like there's people that like it completely different ways. It depends on like what also you are doing, the task that you're performing at the moment. For example, it's different when you're just programming something than when you are designing the level like with a lot of detail. You are able to have multiple for example, I can add here another game here, and I can have like two game views of the same, but like I can rotate them. Well, this one is not as relevant, but for example, let me add another one here, another scene. I can have two, and that they are looking like in different angles or things like that. So probably in a 2D game it's not that useful, but when you are working on 3D and you have to like manage those three axes, it's pretty useful to have different perspectives looking into the same object. Okay, so in order to change that, you just saw that you can just select the tab and like drag it and drop it wherever you need, right? Here I just move it there and put it like there. So you basically can play around, figure out what's the best one for you. This one right now, it's a custom one that I created, is Gabo. It's pretty similar to other ones that exist. I can show you, like here, this button is called layout. The layouts, it's basically different arrangements of these windows. So I'm gonna show you the defaults that Unity gives you. The 2x3, this is how it looks. 4 split, that's the one that I was telling you. This is when you, for example, you need to work on creating a scene and you have 4 different scenes that will give you 4 different views. If you have even more computers, like more monitors, sorry, you will be able to open a different one and have different looks to see how it's going. This is the default, so most likely when you open your game, it will look like this. This is the tall, wide. There's a bunch of different options. I really like this one because I have everything in hand that I need, basically. So let's keep going. Now, layers. Layers is something that we will probably use a little bit, but very basic. The layers is, how to explain it, like you have like different, as the word says, like layers. And because a game consists of objects in a scene, you can have objects in different layers, and then you can decide what's the behavior of each layer according to the other ones, basically. So I can say that I have a layer that doesn't interact with another layer because I don't want them, when they like interact or they collide, to have any interaction at all. I don't care if they are overlapping. Like, actually, like, I want them to not interact when they make contact. This probably will be way more explained once we start looking at it. Like, right now might be a little bit confusing. This account button is just basically to sign in into your account. As I told you, you will need to sign into your account to use Unity. You don't need like a pro license. You can use the personal use. And these buttons here are just the collaboration. This we talked about it like last session, that we mentioned that Unity also has a collaboration tool, like similar to Git, that is proprietary of Unity. I'm not using it because if you just stay with Unity, it's great. But if you tomorrow decide to add something extra, or you want to keep your another type of project with version control, you won't be able to do it. And I want you to learn Git so you can use it in different projects, not just on Unity. So we don't really care about those. Here, your 3 action buttons. The important things about them, this is the play. So when you hit play, it will start your game. You will see that when I click play, it will turn to blue, meaning that the game is running. You can pause your game, and while it's paused, you can like go step by step in your game. I'm gonna explain you a little bit more once we get to the logic of a game, what means the step by step. But just remember, this goes step by step. I can pause and I can stop my game. So when it's not blue, nothing is happening. Something very important to notice is changes that you do, not all of them, but like for the most part, the changes that you make in your game while it's playing are not going to be like saved. You need to on play to be able to change things. That's a good thing and a bad thing. Like, it's a bad thing when you don't remember it and you hit play, then you start making some changes, and then you just realize that you were playing and you hit on play and you lose everything. But it's great because when you hit play, you can make all the changes to the variables and things that you want to see, maybe different setups of a script without altering the base. Here we have 2 buttons that we will probably won't use too much here in this course. This is a little bit more like when you get a little bit more further in your development. But basically this will just tell you where do you want to, like, the objects that you have in Unity have a local position, when like the position that they have on themselves, right? Like, when it's easier when we get here, but there's 2 ways. You can go local or you can go global. Basically, the local is the local position of your object, and the global is, it doesn't matter if it's the child of anything, is the global position. And the center is just to center your camera into the selection. Here we have the core tools that you will be using. Not too much these 2. Like, this one's is just a custom editor tool, we won't use it, and this one is like a everything in one, but we won't use it. But from here we will be using this a lot. So the Rect tool, this is only for things that are like with UI, basically. That's a good example of it, because I haven't got to rect transforms, but the rect tool will let you scale objects using that, like a square, similar to like an image when you like pull the corners, basically. Then we have the scale tool. This one is for all the objects, so you will be able to just scale it. Similar if you have seen a 3D modeling program like Blender or something like that, that you can scale an object in any direction. So you will be able to do that here. Rotation, pretty self-explanatory. You can rotate an object. This one is just to move an object, and this one is just to pan around like in your scene. So I want to show you, like you can see there is changing. There are like hotkeys in your keyboard that are pretty handy for you, because you will be using them and swapping between them pretty often. So if you go ahead and press Q, it will let you go into the hand mode. This will let you pan around, go zoom in and out. And if we had like a 3D scene, there's way more features that you can use with your mouse, but they are not relevant right now. If you press W, it will go into the move. So just so I can show you guys, I have here a cube. Let me just recenter it. Not a cube, like an empty game object. So if I go to pan move, I won't be able to see that, right? Oh yeah, sorry. This tool will help, like will let me know if I wanna select my object on the center of the object or on the pivot point. So some objects can have a pivot point in a different place. For example, let's say we have a stick. The pivot point might be just in one of the corners, but the center is in the center. So depending on where you wanna, for example, rotate it, it's gonna be different if I rotate it from the pivot point than if I rotate it from the center. Well, that's something that we probably won't use. Okay, so let's going back here. We have that the pan movement. If I press sorry, I need to be here. If I press W, I will be able to move my object. So this arrow will let me move it in the Y-axis, as you can see, and this one on the X-axis. If I had a 3D scene, for example, like this, I will be able to move it on this Z axis, right? But we are in a 2D game. That was just something, don't pay much attention to it. That will be something that we won't use, but it was just to show you how to do it. As you can see, there's like this little thing on the right that keeps track of everything that I'm doing here. I will get into there because that's very important as well. Okay, so then if we press again the E key, it will let me rotate my object on different like angles. You see, and and I can rotate them in all the axes, right? Now if I press R, I will go into the scale mode. Oh, something very important, like if you see here, there's this square. This square let me moves in both at the same time, which is pretty cool, but not very, it's not the best practice to use sometimes. Same for the scale. I can scale it in both at the same time, or I can just scale in one axis or on the other, right? And if you see, if I press T, it will get to the rect transform. For this object, is not relevant because I only have a transform. I will need to have a rect transform to be able to use that. Okay, so that's those tools. So remember, from Q to T, you will be able to use those keys. Most likely, you will be using W, E, and R. Those are like the most important ones that you will require. Okay, so now that we just covered that, we can go to this screen. I will go first to this one. because it's another one that it's pretty nice. So when you need Windows, as I told you here, you can go right click on a tab, and you can add tab. This will only show you like the core tabs that you can have, like the core windows, just these ones. But that's not all the windows that Unity has. Here are all the windows that Unity have. There are a lot of windows that we can have, and we can even make custom windows when you just start editing the editor, but we are not going to talk about that. So when you get here, you can go to the asset store, which is the one that I just opened here. The asset store is a great place that Unity has, which, as the name says, is just a store to hold assets. 3D assets, 2D assets, add-ons, so scripts, models, sprites, audio, templates, everything. Like everything is here. You can filter it by price, Unity versions, publisher rating. Like there's a lot of things here. Like you can make a game with just these assets here. Like you will be able to even make an entire complete game using free assets by just assembling them with all, like, everything that is online. But that's not the point of this course, so we probably won't be using it that much. Okay, so let's go back to our next screen, which is the scene screen. The scene screen, it's your like main tab that you will use for your game. So all your game, like your entire game for that specific scene, is gonna be here. So what do I mean about a scene? Like what that scene means? A scene is basically a level. It's not called level because sometimes it's not a level. It could be just like the menu scene or the credit scene, or it could be the level one, or it could be the tutorial. So basically here is where things happen. Here is where you will have things. So everything will occur here. There's a bunch of little things here. I'm probably not gonna go through them too much because we are probably not gonna use them a lot. These things just let me like change the view, like the shading mode, like how do I wanna see my scene. This is very good, for example, when I wanna see the overdraw calls, or the lighting, for example. If I have lighting in my scene, I want to see light overlaps, and this is mainly for like the wireframe, for optimization and things like that. So that won't be covered in this course. Probably, maybe if in the future I make another video like in a higher level, I will start talking about those. This 2D and 3D, this is basically just let you toggle between those two modes, between 2D and 3D. Sometimes even in 2D you might want to see what's going on in 3D perspective, but for the most part when you are working on a 2D game you won't use it. But when you are in a 3D game, sometimes you want to use a 2D perspective, right? And this ones I'm not gonna touch base because we are running a little bit late, so I'm gonna start moving a little bit. So gizmos quickly is just like these objects. For example, like the camera is a gizmo, and I can change the size because depending on what you want to see, and you can toggle them on or off as I just did there. And this search bar, it lets you help, and you can search by the name or by the type of the asset. So for example, if I search by the name, let's say, oh sorry, it needs to be main camera. There you go. So the main camera is the only thing that is showing here. If I go and type by type, I will have to go to camera and it will show the camera. But if I go and search for, like for example, sprite, it won't show me anything because I don't have anything, right? And as you can see, this search bar is the same one that is in here, right? So let's jump to this next tab, which is very important as well. Like, well, all of the tabs that I have here open right now, they are the core windows, like the core tabs that you will need. That's why I keep this layout, because it's the most important that you will use all the time. So the hierarchy is everything, like it's the compilation, as it says, that is the hierarchy of all the objects that exist in your scene. So everything that is dragged into your scene will exist here as a hierarchy. And you will be able to grab those objects by clicking them here. This is also very handy because sometimes you have a bunch of things there on top of each other, and you need to start like clicking here and like rearrange them. And also it's called hierarchy because you can create a hierarchy object. So I can create a nested child here and a nested child, a nested child. This will go forever. Every single object in Unity here is called a game object. So whenever you put something into the hierarchy or into the scene, you will be adding a game object into your scene. This hierarchy, of course, if I delete this, it will get rid of everything, and my scene was changed. So everything that you have here, it's very important. So now let's move into our inspector, because you can see every time that I click something here, something happens in the inspector. So the inspector lets me inspect my objects either on the scene or basically on my hierarchy. So every time that I click something here, like the camera, or I click it here, I will be able to get into the inspector. So as you can see, the objects in Unity, all of them that are here, exist as a game object, and that's this symbol here, that little cube. I have the inspector. This lets me say if the object is active or inactive. So I can deactivate it, and as you can see, my camera goes away, like it doesn't exist anymore. Well, it's like it's inactive. Here is the name of my camera. I can change this name if I want, or I can leave it as it is. Here I have some configurations for the static. This won't be as relevant right now, but static means like it doesn't move basically, or it doesn't get affected by something. So for example, light, or navigation. So when you are on light static, it's because you don't move, so you don't need to calculate like the real-time lighting into an object. Or for example, navigation. We know if an object is static in the navigation, is an obstacle basically. It won't move, so it doesn't need to like get padding or something. But it won't be used too much. Here we have the tags. We will be using tags. So tags is just a way to recognize an object with a tag. And as you can see, we have some predefined tags. For example, editor only main camera. So the main camera will always come with that tag. And we have the player tag. We will be creating more tags, and that's done here. And then we have the layers. This is basically the same as we had that up there. That's why you can change the layer of an object. So depending on the layer you are, it will interact differently with other layers. And then every single object that is created into the hierarchy will have a transform, either a transform or a rect transform. A transform is just a compilation of 3 variables basically here that we can see. So the first one is the position in the 3D space of that object. So we have that our camera is positioned on the 0 on the x axis, 0 on the y axis, and -10 on the z axis. So if we look at this is how it looks. You see, my camera is 10 units away from the plane, right? That's just so we can see things basically. But every single object, if I create a new object here, it will have a new position. The position is created where like your center of your camera in your scene is right now. So if my camera right now was here, that's why it's created here. If I go and select 0, 0, 0, then my game object will be moved here. So as you can like move objects using the arrows like visually here, you are also able to move them by this here, right? The same as the rotation. I can rotate it from here and I can scale it from here. Like all of that is completely doable from my transform. When you can have a different type of transform is when you start talking about UI elements. The UI elements, for example, I will create here a canvas. You see I created a rect transform and I'm gonna create just a quick text. So a text exists in a different place because my canvas right now, this canvas, which is being rendered in the screen space. So it doesn't matter where I move the camera in the game. As you can see, the camera is down there, like it's looking at the game itself. Everything on top, like the camera doesn't matter if it moves. You see, like it's moving around the game. It won't change where is my UI because it's rendered on top of like the camera. So let me just show you here. I'm gonna create a quick quad so you can appreciate it. So let's just put it here and here. So we have our quad there. It's in the space. But if we move our camera, let me just focus on here a little bit. If I move my camera, you see I'm losing like track of that object, but my text, if you don't see it, let me just make it bigger. Let's put it here. Here you have it there. So you have that text, and let's make it white so you can see it. Even though I move my camera, my text will always remain there. So maybe you can start now thinking, oh, that's great for elements in the UI. So similar to our game, our player health and life, even though my player is moving and everything, even if I move the camera, the health will remain there. So that's pretty handy. So let's go back into the rect transform. When I have my rect transform, that's when our rect transform tool comes into play. As I told you here, you can like scale down those type of objects because they have a rect transform. But aside from that, it pretty much works in the same way. It's telling me like where is the position, where is the rotation, which is the pivot point, and which is the scale, and well, also some anchors of that object. We will get into more detail about this, but just for now, you can like understand that every single object that is created in Unity will have either a rect transform or a transform, right? So that's how Unity works. And then in the inspector as well, we can start having some additional components. For example, my main camera has this component called camera, right? And the audio listener. Those are components that I can add. Similar here, I can go here and say I want to add an extra component, right? And I have here a list that you can go through if you need something to add into your object. This is basically all the things that we need on that object to function as what it is. So that's why the camera has the camera component. So when I start creating some scripts, and for example, I create the player controller, our player will require to add a script called player controller. And that's it for the inspector. And now we need to go into our game tab. So the game tab is basically just the preview of our game. So we need a camera that renders into our game view what's happening like in the game. So whatever the camera is capturing, depending on these parameters, these are basically variables in my code. So the variables that I affect here will affect the view of this camera and ending in a different rendering in the game view. So whatever the game looks like at the end is whatever it looks here. So that's why when you hit play, basically you play your game in this window, not in here. Some people don't have like the game view. That's why, for example, we go to the 4-split, it doesn't have a game window, it only has the scenes windows. So when I play, it will open a game window for me somewhere here, for example. But it's not like something that I really want to have or something like that. So it's for development, it's not something that you will be using, but for example on the UI, as you saw, I can show it how it's going to be displaying here. So it's pretty good to have like those two views. That's why I keep both, because I know how things look like in the end game. We're not gonna go too much through this, but this is basically the display that you want to show, the resolution you want to change, so the free aspect, standalone, or if you want to go to the 16:9, which is the phone, the scale if you want to zoom in or zoom out, if you want to maximize on play, which is basically when you hit play, it will maximize your window. This is important to check, so whenever you're working on your game, especially with UI, you gotta make sure that you play it on the big screen, because that's how your game is gonna look like at the end, and the UI will get a little bit messed up. You can mute your audio and other things that you can change here, but we are not gonna take a look at it right now. And then we have our project tab. Our project tab is all our like files that exist in our project. So everything that is in our assets folder will exist here, plus our packages, which is basically the extra plugins and libraries that Unity has imported for us to be able to work. And when we decided that this was a 2D project, that's why it took a little bit to start, it just imported all of these packages. For example, the text mesh pro is just like an improved text script that lets you do way more things than the text that we just saw before. So I have it split into like the project here, like my folder hierarchy, and a preview window that shows me what is inside. It's how I like it. I really